So what do you think, how can we, when we talk in this MOOC about the sustainable management of critical raw materials, how can this contribute to attaining the SDGs?
Well, the SDGs are very consistent with the seminal work for all of us from a policy sense, which is Gro Harlem Brundtland. And I do remember her name, the first female prime minister anywhere in the world of Norway, in her case, in her role as also then later as head of WHO. But in the publication under her name in 1987, Our Common Future, the clues in the title, it's Our Common Future. This is for everyone. She draws strong attention to the fact, which I absolutely agree with, that the driver of all of this should be the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable. And don't forget, I'm sure you won't, SDG 1 and SDG 2 are about hunger and poverty. No hunger, no poverty, or the other way around. And it's very interesting that Bayer, for example, one of the biggest of Europe's chemical companies, pharmaceutical healthcare companies, has now aligned its mission on both sides, the food side and the health side. No poverty, no bad health, no hunger. And that's how its mission is now organized, to SDG compliance. So that gives another clue. BMW, another example, has committed to 100% reuse of all materials in new car manufacture and only going into primary resources, rare earths, of course, important for new electric cars. They only dip into those when the primary resources have run out or new materials are required, which will be the case again in critical materials, which aren't available yet for recycling, although they are more than perhaps we realize. So in that model, you go right the way back, that there is central understanding, and in the broad sense, in Our Common Future, it's referred to as technology by Brundtland, but it's understood that sustainable development consists of an interaction between technology and needs. And if we think of another great thinker in this area who looks at fundamental human needs, this is the anthropologist and sociologist Maslow. Maslow makes very clear that in his so-called hierarchy of needs, there is an escalation, but there is, if you like, as anthropologists call it, a zero condition requirement. If we are going hungry, if we are starving, if we're dying of thirst, if we have nowhere to shelter from the sun or the cold, if we don't have access to communications now, even, in my view, to the internet, which becomes the key enabling tool for all of us in many respects. How do we do that in the remotest parts of the world without disrupting sustainable societies that, like in the Amazon, have been going there, as a report came out today, June the 8th, telling us that they've been there sustainably for 5,000 years, as far as everybody can tell, without disrupting the ecosystem. That's a powerful report. Now, in that model, we need to understand how these interactions between technologies, needs, and fundamental requirements, such as the needs hierarchy explain, how are these critical materials going to map to meeting Maslow's conditions? Because if we can't meet those conditions, Maslow, I think, would say, well, the SDGs, you might as well, as the Germans say, it's pretty cuts. It's the cat might as well go and take it away. It won't work. So in that sense, the challenge that we have to accommodate within your critical materials model is how do the 1.5 billion people that don't have access to sustainable energy, similarly poor water quality, et cetera, how are those people being given access in a way we've not yet managed to do? And as the Gates Foundation said about 9 months ago now, in the first wave of COVID, we've done more to undo in 25 weeks of COVID than we did in 25 years of progress towards sustainable development. Some people are more optimistic, but I share that pessimism. We've gone a long way back, so we've got a long way to come back to normal, whatever normal is, before moving to these goals. But if we don't take the Build Back Better aspect of COVID seriously and reset the way we all think now, particularly post-COVID or during post-COVID, we've missed the one opportunity perhaps in the last 3,000 to 4,000 years to think seriously about what each individual's rights and responsibilities are on the planet for managing these critical resources. Because as the internet people will always tell you, it's the last kilometer that counts. No different with these critical materials. It's who uses them in and at that last kilometer that will determine the outcome.
I would like to talk with you all day. Julian, thanks a lot for these interesting thoughts and for joining us today.